Hello, we are Group 22. Our topic is whether or not information technology is improving the lives of people in developing countries, and we are against this motion. Broadly speaking, information technology is the use of computers to create, process, store, and exchange all forms of electronic data. Information technology has several advantages and has the potential to revolutionize the lives of people in developing countries. However, is it really helpful for developing countries? We'll look at how information technology can adversely impact the lives of people in developing countries.
As first world countries are the ones providing technologies to developing countries, this gives them the power to control what kinds of access they decide to provide. This could skew the information provided as they want. An example of this is Facebook's Free Basics. Free Basics allows free access to what they call basic internet services. They are targeting developing countries, claiming to address three barriers that prevent people from coming online: affordability, access, and awareness. However, Free Basics only provides access to a small selection of apps that Facebook has sponsored, including Bing, AccuWeather, Baby Center, and Mama, and a few others. Besides small language-specific social media apps in some countries, Facebook is, as expected, the only social media app provided on Free Basics. A report by activist group Global Voices found that not only does Free Basics violate net neutrality principles, it is not very helpful to those who use it. Especially with Facebook being a major source of information on Free Basics, using this free service may give people in developing countries skewed information without any other sources to compare to. It has already been banned in India for violating net neutrality rules. Another example of power over developing countries' access to technology is the internet provided in refugee camps. Those in power could use the internet to promote extreme views, for instance, by ISIS, and this is a well-known issue. This could again shift the views of many people who don't have access to any other outside sources of information. Exposing refugee families to inappropriate internet content could also have a negative cultural impact. Refugees don't have control over what they can or cannot see. A further concern is privacy and security. Without any control, refugees never know whether they are being monitored online. It may not be a safe place for them.
Developing country governments must budget and allocate their resources efficiently. A portion of this budget can be assigned to information technology-based solutions. However, it is important not to forget about basic physical services such as healthcare and education. This leads to the question of whether the value provided by technology-based solutions is worth the cost investment. Does satellite broadband internet infrastructure justify reducing the availability of other resources such as food, water, and energy? Would an online nursing application provide more value than building and running physical hospitals? Another point to consider is that developing countries suffered greatly from natural disasters. It may be more beneficial to reduce spending in information technology to build better crisis management programs through emergency supplies. There was a program launched in 2006 called the One Laptop Per Child Project, with the idea of distributing educational computing devices throughout the developing world. The major criticism for this program was that the cost of the project was far too high. For example, in Kenya, providing every child with one laptop would cost 75% of the gross national income. In addition to the affordability concerns, there was a lack of teacher training and educational support. Without the ongoing education infrastructure, students were unable to transition to using the laptops and making effective use of these technological resources. Thus, usage statistics dropped dramatically after 1 month throughout the world.
One other problem that technology may bring to developing countries is that it increases the gap between rich and poor. For multinational corporations, technology allows them to be less dependent on local resources for some of their business functions. Instead, they can outsource certain parts of their business to developing countries. One prominent example of this is the outsourcing of manufacturing processes to other countries such as in Africa or Southeast Asia. Outsourcing can produce similar results compared to using local resources while being more cost-effective. With this in mind, companies may be incentivized to reduce the wages of offshore workers and the taxes paid, leading to more profits for the corporation at the cost of reducing compensation for the workers in developing countries who are helping to generate this profit. Unfortunately, not all work can be outsourced effectively. As developing countries have weaker infrastructure compared to more developed ones, it is more difficult for them to support technologically oriented activities which are empowering to its residents. Corporations may choose to conduct these activities in developed countries where they can better leverage the improved infrastructure. In turn, critics argue that corporations outsource work to developing countries that require less compensation and skills for workers and are less tech-oriented, while allocating the more technical work to the countries that corporations operate in or more developed ones. It's clear to see that developing countries get the short end of the deal as they receive less of the benefits technology brings them and less money, while the more developed countries keep most of the benefits, and thus this widens the gap between rich and poor. Critics have also called out the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank as perpetrators in widening this gap. IMF and the World Bank give loans to developing countries as long as they privatize their economies and allow more access to their raw materials and resources for more developed countries. Usually, developing countries end up with significant debt owed to the World Bank, and this debt is used by the World Bank to enforce policies on these countries. Coupled with the points mentioned on the last slide, where developed countries are looking to outsource their work, end up paying less wages to workers in developing countries, this means that developing countries find it harder and harder to pay back the debt owed to the World Bank, thus creating a cycle of poverty. Worse still, the governments of these countries may further cut wages and public services to try to pay back this debt, which once again furthers the gap.
One of the adverse impacts of IT is that it replaces jobs with many repetitive tasks. Even in developing countries, cashiers are being replaced by self-checkout machines at grocery stores. Online banking has played a significant role in curtailing the job responsibilities of bank tellers. Automated telephone operators are also replacing phone operators at a very fast pace. As jobs are becoming increasingly automated, more people lose their jobs and become unemployed. The government is obliged to provide various subsidies to unemployed people, which ultimately increases the burden on a developing country's economy.
Through information technology, developing countries risk losing their cultural identities as they assimilate themselves into an increasingly westernized world. Such identities include language, system of belief, literature, customs, and values that make one community different from the others. Individuals are significantly influenced by the Hollywood films that they watch and adapt to fashion trends that they see online. English is the dominant language of the internet. Many communities living in Africa and South America abandon their mother tongues to speak English or another language of the dominant culture. It is important for information technology to support the localization of these cultural languages so that their mother tongues are not lost. Another issue with information technology is that social media is making us less sociable. Nowadays, interacting over Facebook or WhatsApp is preferred over face-to-face interactions. These social media interactions often fail to convey emotions, and the chances of misunderstanding is high due to the lack of nonverbal communication.
Does it really solve the problem that they have? Although information technology may seem to be able to help developing countries, it does not actually solve the real problems that they are facing. If the country have problem with badly run healthcare and education, giving them laptops and mobile phones will not help. Computers can benefit good schools, but they cannot make up for poorly run schools and absent teachers. Another example is that there is an electronic forum for people to submit complaints publicly online, but if the government is not willing to address the problem, then it is the problem of intent, not of technology. What we are supposed to give them is better education and other skills so that they can build the technology that they need by themselves. For example, in agriculture, instead of developing better technologies for farmers, we can teach them skills and give them pieces of knowledge in order for them to create and incorporate the technology. Information technology should be part of the solution, but having it alone will not solve all the problems they are facing. In conclusion, although there are several advantages to the use of information technology in improving the lives of developing countries, there could also be some major disadvantages. The drawbacks include giving the rich the power to control what the poor can see, taking away from scarce resources, making the rich richer and the poor poorer, replacing human resources, and altering culture and social structure. In the end, information technology alone will not solve all the problems that developing countries are facing.